Hello, I am Mariana Mazzucato, and it's a pity I cannot be there with you today, but I wanted to give some comments on this very important day where the Berlin Declaration is being discussed. So, first of all, the world is facing huge challenges, our triple planetary crisis of global warming, the biodiversity loss, the global water crisis. All these things are destabilizing our planetary boundaries. And at the same time, we have health pandemics. We will have another. The digital divide and deep inequalities are driving a wedge into our societies. So the question of our time is how to transform these challenges into opportunities for investment, innovation, and growth. We shouldn't have a system where we talk about society, inequality, and climate here, and then economic growth, industrial strategy, innovation strategy there. How do we turn these challenges into opportunities for investment-led, innovation-led directed growth? Second, governments have a renewed sense of purpose and legitimacy to drive change in this area. But what does that mean? We're told government is back, industrial strategy is back, the Inflation Reduction Act has pumped in billions of public investment in the US economy, with some signs of success. It actually is spurring some investment across the US. The private sector has been estimated at actually investing 866 billion and expected to grow into the trillions. And the EU and others are responding with their own plans. In Europe, we have the Next Gen EU plan, which is about 2 trillion being distributed across the member states based on climate and digitalization agendas. And there's also talk about the EU's own IRA type strategy. However, and this is the third, to have this transformation, to have industrial strategy actually work for people and planet, both nationally and globally, we have to actually structure it to be just and inclusive. It doesn't happen on its own. This isn't just about pouring in a lot of public investment and private investment and hoping for the best. For it to work for working people, we need a new deal between government and business and between capital and labor, but also with citizens at the core. How do we actually structure an industrial strategy that puts better lives of people in terms of how they live, how they eat, how they have access to all the rights that they have if we think about the Sustainable Development Goals at the center? It's impossible to do this just by talking about investment for investment's sake. So the idea of also a mission-oriented, challenge-oriented industrial strategy that puts net zero, preparedness for the next health pandemic, reducing the digital divide at the center of how different sectors transform, innovate, collaborate with government and with labor towards those challenges. This is the design challenge. This won't happen, again, just by talking about partnership or ecosystems. This requires symbiotic ecosystems. This is why we need conditionality linked to any loan, subsidy, guarantee to make sure that those companies benefiting from public programs are actually investing in better working conditions or investing in better energy efficient supply chains or reinvesting the profits they're making back into the system instead of what we have, which is an incredibly financialized corporate sector with over $6 trillion over the last 10 years having been used just for share buybacks, which represents what the physiocrats in the 1700s would have said sterility in the system. It's money not being reinvested back in. So in this context, the Berlin Declaration is incredibly important. It's a commitment to designing this new deal between public and private, between capital and labor, but also the global agenda. We need to remember that what might look good in one country, like the Inflation Reduction Act, actually can be hurting other countries in Africa if it means, for example, that there's capital leaving those other countries just to come to the US where these subsidies are so much greater. So we need a global deal as well. And it's also really time to call out global finance that is too financialized, hoarded, and misaligned. It's time to call out business that's too short-termist and focused on shareholder value. And it's time to call out government that is not ambitious or capable enough to drive the change that's required because it's just been outsourcing a lot of that capacity, for example, to the consulting companies. So we need to invest within our civil service and public service to be capable of even implementing these very bold and ambitious strategies. And, lastly, I just want to stop by saying that the Berlin Declaration in many ways is about a movement. It's time for new economic thinking that can only lead to real change if it's driven by committed networks of academics, policymakers, institutes, and governments. And it requires a new way of thinking about governance, governance within business, governance within our public institutions, and governance of how to actually form a dynamic, symbiotic, mission-oriented partnership to truly tackle the problems of our time so that the teenagers out there stop telling us to stop blah, blah, blahing. Thank you so much.